Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've had a great lunch. Thank you. I feel very honored to be presenting today because I primarily submitted my application for this infographic contest on the last day, luckily for me, of the deadline, when I really wanted to come to this conference, but I was deterred by the admission fee. So here so I hail from Singapore, and I would like to commence with a quote by Lee Kuan Yew, the founding father, who mentioned that while ASEAN's declared objectives were economic, social, and cultural, all knew that progress in economic cooperation would be slow. We were banded together more for political objectives, stability, and security. And it is with this in mind that I wish to dwell more on the secondary priority, economic growth and development in ASEAN. And before I really commence, two admissions. First, I feel very intimidated speaking on this topic, which is precisely the topic of the inaugural public event of the LSE Southeast Asian event, given by Dato Sri Nazi on the AAC, which Professor Danny Kwao might remember. And secondly, by the sheer expertise in this room, I'm sure many or even most of you must have studied, re-examined, and re-looked at ASEAN for more years than I've been born. Alright, with my speech. Three aspects. Firstly, on the infographic. Secondly, on a personal sharing. And thirdly, on optimism for the future of ASEAN based on some historical lessons. So firstly, on the infographic. I have given some statistics, some figures, which may seem glossy from the onset, where we see American FDI into ASEAN with a whopping $136 billion. And that is 11% of the global FDI inflow. To top that, tourist arrivals in the ASEAN region doubled from 2007 to 2014. However, perennial challenges remain, such as unequal, unsustainable economic growth, with the classic comparison between Myanmar and Singapore. Inequality and poverty lurks in the backdrop. And yet, I find the infographic remains a limited platform. It's limited by its nature because it remains, based on the judge's comments, as I'm sure will be elaborated later, it remains just a detached compilation of facts and figures. And it is with this intent that I wish to complement this ostensible yet understandable disconnect with a more personal perspective from an ASEAN youth like myself. But one important qualifier, please. According to the McKinsey Insights report, more than 65% of the ASEAN population is under 35. And as mentioned previously by the first speaker, Pearl, given ASEAN's 635 million population, that is 400 million youths. So today I speak for myself or at most for Singaporean youths. Nonetheless, ASEAN to me has always remained more than a static theoretical concept from the history A-level syllabus or the newspapers. My childhood has been peppered with ASEAN associations, many admittedly unbeknownst to me then. As an avid chess player growing up, I used to represent Singapore at various ASEAN competitions. I distinctly remember cultural performances after each weary day of competition. Looking back, these cultural exchanges were never mere casual entertainment for a laugh or a stretch. Indeed, they fitted into one of ASEAN's primary goals, which is agreed upon by the 5 founding states to accelerate cultural development in the region. My family has also been blessed with our domestic help who hails from the Philippines, who I affectionately call Auntie Sylvia. And it is no coincidence that it's a birthday today. So happy birthday, Auntie. She represents many Filipinas who left their families and loved ones, most notably their infant children, for a foreign land, for example Singapore, to earn their keep. However, the growing Filipino community in Singapore and the region still leaves much room for improvement in terms of social integration. Recent distasteful remarks about the congregation of Filipinas, that is Filipino women, in front of Lucky Plaza, an iconic shopping center on the shopping belt of Singapore, only echo sentiments of the NIMBY syndrome, the not in my backyard syndrome. And this was further reflected in the incident quite recently as well, when Singaporeans were up in arms protesting against the construction of a foreign workers' dormitory in the heart of a residential estate, the Serangoon Gardens residential estate in Singapore. In light of the growing proportion of migrant workers, which will be expected to hail from the region, ASEAN, I find grandiose notions of ASEAN's core mission founding statement, one vision, one identity, one community, and even espoused in the so-called ASEAN anthem, which I'm sure is not that, how should I put it? We don't really hear about it much. Must be matched with grassroots efforts of comparable vigor to foster a greater sense of ASEAN identity amongst the population, young and old alike. Since moving to London recently, I've had the privilege to enjoy the conveniences of the EU, most prominently the ease of travel within the Schengen zone. While both regional blocs have witnessed recent successes, such as the growth in member states, each faces mounting challenges looming ahead. The upcoming historical referendum, Brexit, threatens to forever change the EU narrative. ASEAN faces the consistent power balance issue between China and India due to its geographic location in the center of Asia. To this end, I find both blocs should look to each other for counsel and inspiration to chart the future. On top of that, I wish to inject some optimism into the regional bloc ASEAN based on some historical lessons, given the rather gloomy morning that we have had, condemning ASEAN as a talk shop and etc. So from history, I find that the very unique ASEAN way, this preference for informality, the emphasis on confidence building, mutual consensus, as opposed to functional military pacts such as the ones prevalent in NATO, is a unique institution of ASEAN that should be cherished and will see us through the future. This approach was officialized by the 1976 TAC, the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, which emphasized on values such as sovereignty, the non-use of force, and non-intervention. And one classic case was in the clash of the South China Sea, which dated back way in 1990, when China refused to internationalize this issue, but agreed to the ways of the ASEAN ways to non-official platforms, such as a workshop on workshops on managing potential conflict in the South China Sea, organized in Bali in 1990. Secondly, I think optimism for the future of ASEAN can be found in the early successes of ASEAN as an institution to promote regional cooperation, something which is dearly needed today. The ASEAN Way, previously mentioned, espoused this new vision where war is no longer an acceptable instrument of conflict resolution. And ASEAN carved out a diplomatic role in the management of the Cambodian problem, also known as the Kampuchean conflict from 1979 to 91, which was triggered when Vietnam invaded Cambodia. ASEAN witnessed solidarity and collective diplomacy. For example, Singapore and Thailand alerted the international community, exerting pressure on then already established international bodies such as the UN to maintain recognition of democratic Kampuchea, later then known as the CGDK, the Coalition Government of Democratic Kampuchea, rather than giving in to pressures to recognize the PRK, the Vietnam-installed People's Republic of Kampuchea. The later incorporation of Vietnam, the aggressor in that conflict, into ASEAN in 1995 is further testimony to this inclusive approach, which is now often dubbed as the sports shirt diplomacy, as we witness over the golf courses in Southeast Asia, where they usually have their casual conversations. To end off, I find that optimism for ASEAN is crucial, and it can be embodied on the chessboard, where I see 4 valuable assets, characteristics which diplomats of the ASEAN countries should aspire to continue displaying during their negotiations. Firstly, stability, embodied by the king with its measured moves. Stability is a value that all countries in ASEAN, at least, aspire to continue cherishing for stability and predictability, at least in the external political environment. Secondly, openness, embodied by the lover, the queen. I find openness is something which the Western world can probably learn much from, because it's often quick to criticize the ASEAN way and other unique ASEAN institutions such as the weird handshake, for example. Thirdly, flexibility, represented by the knight in its rather queer movement. And flexibility is key for the 4th and final value of resolution, embodied by the humble pawn, the warrior, where this sheer perseverance and flexibility in negotiations to make compromises while at the same time preserving the ASEAN values is key for the future of ASEAN. And with that, I hope we keep in mind the optimism of ASEAN in spite of its current state and the perennial challenges that ASEAN is plagued by. Thank you.
Well done, Cheryl. That's an excellent